We're just days away from reaching 1,000 subscribers. If we hit this goal in the next 15 days, we'll be able to keep the channel running and continue bringing you these stories. Your subscription makes all the difference. It's quick and helps us enormously. The Revealing Silence. Chapter 1. The Voice That Overwhelms. Ravenswood Castle, Yorkshire, spring 1854. The grand salon vibrated with animated conversations of London high society, who had come to attend the intellectual debate organised by Adrian Blackthorne, 8th Duke of Ravenswood. These evenings had become legendary. The most brilliant minds of the era gathered to discourse on philosophy, sciences, literature and politics. That evening, the subject was particularly controversial. Women's education, necessity or danger for society. Lord Pemberton, fervent defender of traditions, verbally confronted Professor William Ashworth from Oxford, progressive advocate for feminine instruction. "Gentlemen," exclaimed Lord Pemberton, waving his whiskey glass, "you advocate the destruction of the natural order. An overly educated woman becomes a denatured creature, incapable of fulfilling her role as wife and mother." "On the contrary," replied Professor Ashworth, "an educated woman is a better companion, a mother more capable of raising her children. Look at the Parisian salons where women like Madame de Staël shine." The masculine assembly divided noisily. The ladies, relegated to the armchairs in the back, listened without daring to intervene in this debate that concerned them first and foremost. In the midst of this prestigious assembly, a 23-year-old woman observed the scene with particular attention. Eleanor Whitmore had arrived at the castle 2 months earlier as governess to Lady Catherine Blackthorne, the Duke's orphaned niece. Daughter of an eminent Cambridge professor who died in poverty, Eleanor had received an exceptional education, but now had to earn her living by teaching. Her discreet beauty escaped no one. Chestnut hair with golden highlights framed a fine face with intelligent green eyes. But what truly distinguished her was the acuity of her gaze and the natural nobility of her bearing. Adrian Blackthorne, 32 years old, host of this evening, presided over the debates from his leather armchair. Widowed for 3 years, he was known for his exceptional intelligence and rare open-mindedness among the aristocracy. His dark gaze regularly swept the assembly, but tonight it often lingered on Eleanor's graceful silhouette. "The question is simple," thundered Lord Pemberton, standing up. "God created man to think and woman to feel. To want to change this divine order is to open the door to chaos." "Nonsense," protested Professor Ashworth. "Intelligence has no gender. I've known female students at Cambridge who surpassed their male classmates." "Impossible," sneered Lord Wickshire. "A woman can memorize, repeat, but create, innovate? Never. Look at history. Where are the great female philosophers, the great female scientists, the great female composers?" "They never had the opportunity," cried the professor. "How can one compose when conservatories refuse you entry? How can one philosophize when universities are closed to you?" Duke Adrian followed these exchanges with interest, but his attention was increasingly captivated by Eleanor's passionate expression. He saw her eyes shine with indignation, her hands clench on the armrests of her chair. Her lips moved silently, as if she were holding back burning words. "Gentlemen," intervened Lady Pemberton with condescension, "you forget the essential. An overly learned woman neglects her family duties. Do you prefer a wife who dissertates on Plato, or one who watches over her home's happiness?" "Why not both?" murmured Eleanor, but so quietly that only her neighbour heard. "Because it's against nature," cried Lord Pemberton. "A woman who reads too much becomes melancholic, whimsical, rebellious. Look at those Parisian bluestockings who advocate divorce and free love." The debate was turning to caricature. Eleanor felt her indignation grow with each phrase. These men spoke of women as objects, inferior creatures incapable of autonomous thought. And the women present accepted this contempt in silence. The proof of masculine superiority, declared Sir Charles Ashford solemnly, is that no woman here present would dare contradict our arguments. They instinctively know their place. It was one phrase too many. Eleanor stood abruptly, her green eyes blazing with contained anger. "Allow me to correct you, Sir Charles." Her clear and firm voice cut through the air like a blade. Instantly, all conversations ceased. All gazes converged on this young woman who dared to defy the masculine assembly. The silence that fell upon the salon was so profound that one could hear the crackling of flames in the fireplace. Adrian, fascinated, leaned forward, his heart beating with inexplicable emotion. "Miss," began Lord Pemberton, outraged. "Miss Whitmore, governess to Lady Catherine," replied Eleanor without lowering her eyes, "and Cambridge graduate, albeit unofficially." Stupefied murmurs ran through the audience. A governess, a domestic who dared to speak. "Miss Whitmore," said Adrian in a strangled voice, his heart beating to breaking point, "we are listening." Eleanor breathed deeply and looked at this assembly of powerful men who defied her. But in the Duke's eyes she saw neither contempt nor condescension. She saw something that resembled admiration. "Gentlemen," she began, in a voice that trembled slightly but carried throughout the salon, "you debate women's education like a hunter would debate training a dog, with that same certainty of your superiority, that same ignorance of your subject's true nature." The audacity of this declaration left the assembly mute. Adrian felt something explode in his chest. This young woman, this simple governess, had just formulated in one sentence what none of the brilliant debaters had managed to express. Eleanor continued, her voice gaining confidence. "You claim that history proves women's intellectual inferiority. But how can one judge a race where half the runners have their feet chained?" Adrian stood instinctively, electrified by this perfect metaphor. Around him, the silence had become religious. "You cite the absence of great female philosophers," Eleanor continued, "but do you know Hypatia of Alexandria, mathematician and philosopher of the 4th century? Christine de Pizan, the first professional woman of letters? Mary Wollstonecraft, who theorized gender equality? No, because no one ever told you about them. The history you know is the one written by men, about men, for men." The effect of these words was devastating. Several ladies straightened up, eyes bright with emotion. Adrian, for his part, was literally captivated. This woman didn't just speak with intelligence. She spoke with passion, conviction, an inner flame that transfigured her face. "Miss," said Lord Pemberton in a voice trembling with rage, "you forget your place." "My place?" Eleanor turned to him, and her smile was a challenge. "My place, my lord, is exactly where my intelligence takes me. And if that disturbs you, perhaps it's because your own place is less secure than you think." The silence that followed was electric. Adrian looked at this extraordinary woman who had just revolutionized his evening, his worldview, and his heart. For yes, listening to her speak with this intelligent passion, this quiet courage, this beauty of soul that transfigured her face, the Duke of Ravenswood had just fallen in love, irremediably, instantly, totally in love, and he knew, with a certainty that terrified him as much as it amazed him, that his life had just tilted forever. Chapter 2. Admiration and Obstacle. The silence that had greeted Eleanor's words finally broke in a hubbub of indignant exclamations and timid applause. Lord Pemberton was livid, Sir Charles was fuming, but Professor Ashworth was openly applauding. "Remarkable," he exclaimed. "That's exactly what I hoped to hear. Miss Whitmore, your arguments are perfectly sound." "Scandalous," protested Lord Wickshire. "A domestic giving lessons to her superiors. Where are we going?" "We're going toward more truth," Eleanor replied calmly, still standing at the center of general attention. For truth has no social class, my lord. Adrian couldn't take his eyes off her. Every word, every gesture, every expression of this remarkable woman fascinated him more. He realized he had never felt this before, not even with his late wife Elizabeth, whom he had nonetheless sincerely loved. "Miss Whitmore," he said in a voice he hoped was composed, but which trembled slightly, "would you develop your thoughts on feminine education for us?" All gazes turned to the Duke. That he would ask the opinion of a governess was already extraordinary, but the respectful tone he employed left the assembly perplexed. Eleanor looked at him gratefully. "Your Grace, I think education should have no gender, just as intelligence has none. An educated woman doesn't become less feminine, she becomes more complete. But the social consequences?" intervened Lady Pemberton. "An overly instructed woman can't find a husband. What man would want a wife more learned than himself?" "An intelligent man," replied Eleanor without hesitation. "A man who seeks a companion and not a decorated doll." Adrian felt these words touch him to the heart. This woman described exactly what he had always secretly desired without daring to admit it. An equal. An intellectual and emotional soulmate. "You dream, my poor child," said Lady Pemberton condescendingly. "Men want to be admired, not challenged." "Perhaps because they've never been offered an alternative," Eleanor replied. "How can we know what they truly prefer? Most have never met a truly educated woman." "Unfortunately," grumbled Lord Pemberton. The evening continued for another hour, but the tone had changed. Eleanor had opened a breach in masculine certainties, and several guests, intrigued despite themselves, asked her questions. Adrian literally drank in her words, discovering an intelligence as fine as it was passionate. When guests began to retire, Adrian approached Eleanor, who was discreetly gathering her things. "Miss Whitmore," he said softly, "could you grant me a few minutes, in private?" Eleanor looked up at him, surprised by the gravity of his tone. "Of course, Your Grace." When the salon emptied, they found themselves alone near the fireplace. Adrian seemed nervous, which surprised Eleanor. She had never seen the Duke as anything but perfectly self-controlled. "Miss Whitmore," he began, "what you did tonight, it was extraordinary. I hope you don't regret it, Your Grace. I may have compromised your evening. On the contrary, you saved it from mediocrity." Adrian looked at her intensely. "Your arguments were brilliant, your courage remarkable, and your eloquence." He stopped, conscious that his compliments were becoming too personal. "Where did you learn to debate thus?" he asked. Eleanor smiled with a touch of melancholy. "My father was a professor at Cambridge. He raised me as he would have raised the son he never had. I attended his classes, participated in his discussions with colleagues, until his death. And then? Then I discovered that an educated woman without fortune had only two choices: become a governess or starve. I chose governess." The sadness in her voice squeezed Adrian's heart. "Eleanor, may I call you Eleanor?" She blushed slightly. "If you wish, Your Grace." "Eleanor, what you said tonight, about intelligent men who seek companions and not dolls, did you really mean it?" "Absolutely." She looked at him with curiosity. "Why this question?" Adrian approached her, his heart beating. "Because I believe I am that man, and I believe you are that woman." Eleanor stepped back, troubled by the intensity of his gaze. "Your Grace, what do you mean?" "I mean," said Adrian, approaching again, "that listening to you speak tonight, I felt something I had never felt before, something that resembled—" "No," whispered Eleanor, understanding where he was going. "No, Your Grace, you must not." "Love," Adrian finished. "An instant, devastating love, an intellectual and emotional thunderbolt. Eleanor closed her eyes, fighting against the emotion rising in her. For she too, meeting his gaze while she spoke, had felt that spark, that immediate connection. "Your Grace," she said in a trembling voice, "you forget who I am, a governess, a domestic, and you are a duke." "I don't forget it. But tonight I discovered that you are also the most remarkable woman I have ever met. That changes nothing about our respective positions. It changes everything." Adrian took her hands in his. "Eleanor, you said that intelligence has no social class. Neither does love. Love, perhaps not, but marriage does." Eleanor gently withdrew her hands. "Your Grace, you are moved by the novelty of our exchanges. You confuse intellectual admiration with amorous sentiment." "No," said Adrian firmly. "No, Eleanor. What I feel goes far beyond admiration. It's love, pure and simple." "Even if it were true," said Eleanor, tears in her eyes, "it could lead nowhere. Your family, society, your rank. Everything opposes us." "Then let's change the rules," said Adrian with passion. "You defied conventions tonight. Defy them again. It's not that simple." "Yes, it's exactly that simple." Adrian looked at her with an intensity that made her heart beat faster. "Eleanor, do you at least accept to consider my feelings, to let me court you?" Eleanor looked at him for a long time, torn between her heart crying yes and her reasons screaming impossible. "Your Grace," she said finally, "you ask the impossible. I ask for a chance, just one. And if this chance led us both to disaster, then we would face it together." Adrian replied without hesitation. "Eleanor, tonight, when you spoke, when the entire room fell silent to listen to you, I understood that I had just met my soulmate." Eleanor closed her eyes, fighting against her last resistances. When she reopened them, they shone with tears and hope. "Your Grace, Adrian, if we take this path, there will be no turning back." "I don't want a way back," said Adrian, gently caressing her cheek. "I want a future with you." And when Eleanor slowly nodded in agreement, Adrian knew he had just won the most beautiful challenge of his life, the love of an extraordinary woman who had had the courage to speak when all others remained silent. Chapter 3. The Secret Courtship. The weeks that followed were for Adrian and Eleanor a delicious mixture of secret happiness and constant anguish. Officially, their relationship hadn't changed. She remained Lady Catherine's governess, he the master of the house, but unofficially they lived an idyll as passionate as it was impossible. Their moments of intimacy were stolen, a prolonged conversation in the library when the house slept, a walk in the gardens under the pretext of supervising Catherine's education, glances exchanged during meals in the presence of servants. Adrian discovered with wonder the depth of Eleanor's mind. Their discussions extended from philosophy to poetry, from politics to natural sciences. Never had he met someone capable of following him, even surpassing him, on all these grounds. "You've read Wollstonecraft in the original version?" he asked one evening as they strolled through the rose garden. "Naturally," Eleanor replied, smiling, "but also Mary Estelle, who preceded her by a century in her reflections on feminine education, and Catherine Macaulay, whose history of England rivals that of Hume." "Decidedly," murmured Adrian, "you amaze me more each day." But their happiness was constantly threatened by social reality. Lady Catherine herself, despite her 15 years, was beginning to notice the particular attention her uncle paid to her governess. "Uncle Adrian," she said one morning during her French lesson, "why does Miss Whitmore look so happy these last few weeks?" Eleanor blushed violently, but Adrian kept his calm. "She appreciates her work here, I suppose. Don't you, Miss Whitmore?" "Indeed, Your Grace," replied Eleanor in a voice she hoped was steady. "Lady Catherine, is making remarkable progress." But Catherine wasn't fooled. This intelligent adolescent had noticed the exchanged smiles, the conversations that ceased when she entered a room, the particular light in Eleanor's eyes when she looked at the Duke. Danger came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Henderson, the head governess, had also observed the change in atmosphere. One evening, she requested an audience with the Duke. "Your Grace," she said in a reproachful tone, "we must talk about Miss Whitmore." Adrian felt his blood freeze. "What is it, Mrs. Henderson?" "Your Grace, I have served you for 20 years. I saw your late wife grow up. I wept at her funeral. And I tell you this with all the respect I owe you. You are behaving improperly with this young woman." "What are you talking about?" asked Adrian, trying to maintain a neutral tone. "Your Grace, the entire household sees it. The glances, the private conversations, the walks. You're compromising this poor child." "Miss Whitmore is an appreciated employee. Miss Whitmore is a young woman without protection whom you're putting in an impossible situation," interrupted Mrs. Henderson. "If rumors leave this house, she'll be ruined. No respectable family will want her as governess anymore." Adrian stood abruptly, the reality of the situation hitting him full force. Mrs. Henderson was right. By yielding to his feelings, he was putting Eleanor in danger. "What do you suggest?" he asked in a muffled voice. "Find her a position elsewhere, with excellent references, far from here." "No!" The word burst from his mouth before he could hold it back. Mrs. Henderson looked at him with stupefaction. "Your Grace, I won't send her away. I can't." "Then marry her," said Mrs. Henderson suddenly. The silence that followed was deafening. Adrian looked at his old governess as if seeing her for the first time. "What?" "You heard me well, Your Grace. If you can't let her go, and if you refuse to give her up, marry her." "Mrs. Henderson, you know well that's impossible." "Why? Because she's a governess? Because she has no title?" "Your Grace, I've seen how you look at her. I've seen how she looks at you. It's love, true love. Do you think that's so frequent?" Adrian collapsed in his armchair. Society would never accept it. "Society gets used to everything, Your Grace, and you're rich and powerful enough to impose your choices. And my family, my name, my lineage, your family will survive you, your name too. But love, Your Grace, love only presents itself once in a lifetime." This conversation haunted Adrian for days. He avoided Eleanor, not knowing what to do anymore. She, for her part, sensed this change and suffered terribly from it. "Adrian," she said to him one evening when they had met by chance in the library, "what's wrong? You've been avoiding me for a week." "Eleanor." Adrian looked at her with such evident pain that she instinctively approached him. "Tell me, whatever happens, tell me." "Mrs. Henderson knows about us." Eleanor paled. "What will she do?" "She gave me two choices, send you away from here or marry you." Eleanor sat down slowly, absorbing the shock. "And you chose what?" "I can't choose. Sending you away would kill me. But marrying you—" "Eleanor, do you know what that means? The scandal, social ostracism, my family's anger." "I know it," she said in a weak voice, "and that's why you must send me away." "No." Adrian knelt before her. "No, Eleanor, I can't. I can no longer live without you." "Then what do you propose?" Adrian took her hands in his heart beating. "I propose to defy the entire world. I propose to prove that love can triumph over conventions. Eleanor Whitmore, will you marry me?" Eleanor looked at him for a long time, tears in her eyes. "Adrian, are you sure? Really sure? For if we marry, there will be no possible way back." "I'm sure," said Adrian, bringing her hands to his lips, "more sure than of anything else in my life. Eleanor, you are the most remarkable woman I have ever met. You are my intellectual equal, my moral superior, and the only person who makes my heart beat. Adrian, marry me. Become my Duchess. Let's show the world that a woman's worth isn't measured by her title, but by her character." Eleanor closed her eyes, then reopened them, bright with determination. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Adrian, I'll marry you." And when he kissed her, they both knew they had just crossed the point of no return. Soon, all of England would know that a duke had married his governess, and they were ready to face the consequences, provided they faced them together. Chapter 4. The Triumph of the Mind. 3 months later, Ravenswood Village Church had never known such affluence. Coming from all Yorkshire, and even from London, crowds pressed to attend this marriage that was the talk of the chronicles, a duke marrying his governess. Eleanor, radiant in her ivory silk dress, walked up the central aisle on Adrian's arm. Contrary to the most pessimistic predictions, their union had received unexpected support. Professor Ashworth had come from Oxford, accompanied by several progressive colleagues. Lady Catherine, beaming with happiness for her uncle, proudly held the role of maid of honour. "Nervous?" murmured Eleanor to Adrian as they advanced toward the altar. "Terrified," he replied with a smile, "and absolutely certain of making the right choice." In the congregation, reactions were mixed. Some nobles had come out of pure curiosity, others out of real sympathy for this couple that defied conventions. Absent, of course, were Lord Pemberton and his ilk, who had called this union a scandal against nature. "My very dear brothers," began the pastor, "we are gathered here to celebrate the union of Adrian Blackthorne and Eleanor Whitmore, a marriage founded not on interests or conveniences, but on love and mutual esteem." The pastor's words resonated in the church like a revolutionary proclamation. For yes, this marriage was revolutionary. It proved that a woman could rise by her merit alone, that a man could choose love over social rank. "Adrian," asked the pastor, "do you accept to take Eleanor as your wife, to cherish and respect her, to recognize in her your equal in all things?" "Yes," said Adrian in a clear voice that carried throughout the church. "Yes, I accept her as my equal, my companion, the woman of my life." "And you, Eleanor, do you accept to take Adrian as your husband, to share his joys and sorrows, to walk at his side as his partner?" "Yes," replied Eleanor, and her voice was firm and determined. "Yes, I accept him as my companion, my friend, the man of my heart." When Adrian slipped the ring onto Eleanor's finger, she felt she was definitively crossing the threshold of a new life. Never again would she be a woman alone, dependent on others' charity. She was becoming a duchess, certainly, but more still, she was becoming the equal of the man she loved. "You may kiss the bride," said the pastor with a smile. Adrian didn't hesitate. He took Eleanor's face in his hands and kissed her with all the tenderness and passion he had contained for months. The applause that erupted in the church was sincere and warm. Later, during the reception at the castle, Eleanor moved among the guests with natural ease that commanded admiration. Dressed in a blue silk gown that enhanced her eyes, she was the very embodiment of aristocratic grace. "Your Grace," said Professor Ashworth, bowing before her, "allow me to congratulate you. Your marriage is an example for all those who believe in social progress." "Thank you, Professor," replied Eleanor. "I hope we'll know how to show that love and intelligence can triumph over prejudices." "You've already shown it," intervened a voice behind them. They turned to see Lady Margaret Ashworth, a woman in her 50s with a reputation as an intellectual. "Lady Ashworth," said Eleanor, surprised, "I didn't think to see you here." "My dear child, I couldn't miss this historic event. A duke who marries a governess for her intelligence rather than an heiress for her dowry. You give hope to all the women of England." Indeed, Eleanor and Adrian's marriage had become a symbol. In London salons, they spoke of nothing but this governess who had conquered a duke through her mind alone. Some were indignant, others inspired. "Your Grace," said a young woman, approaching timidly, "I am Miss Thompson, a schoolteacher in London. Your story, it gives us all courage." Eleanor smiled with emotion. "Miss Thompson, never forget that your worth doesn't depend on men's opinion of you, but on the opinion you have of yourself." Adrian, observing the scene from afar, felt his heart swell with pride. His wife was not only beautiful and intelligent, she was also generous and inspiring. "My dear Adrian," said Lord Pemberton, suddenly approaching, "I hope you don't regret your choice." Adrian turned toward him, and his expression hardened. "Lord Pemberton, I'm surprised to see you here. I couldn't miss such a spectacle. Tell me, are you certain this woman hasn't bewitched you? A simple governess marrying a duke? That smacks of black magic. That smacks of true love," Adrian replied coldly, "something you wouldn't understand." "Love," sneered Lord Pemberton. "In 6 months, when the novelty has worn off, you'll see this woman in her true light, an opportunist who took advantage of your weakness." "Sir," said Adrian in a dangerously calm voice, "you insult my wife. I ask you to leave my house immediately." "Your wife?" Lord Pemberton laughed contemptuously. "This former domestic will always be—" He didn't have time to finish his sentence. Adrian had seized him by the arm and was leading him toward the exit. "Out," he said simply, "and never set foot in my home again." When he returned to Eleanor, she smiled at him gratefully. "Thank you," she said simply. "No one will insult my wife under my roof," replied Adrian. "No one." That evening, in their conjugal chamber, Eleanor and Adrian finally found themselves alone. "Any regrets?" asked Eleanor, undoing her hair. "None," replied Adrian, approaching her. "And you?" "How could I regret marrying the man who listened to me when I spoke, the man who saw me as an equal rather than a domestic?" Adrian took her in his arms. "Eleanor, promise me something." "What?" "Never stop speaking, never stop thinking, debating, questioning. It's your voice that seduced me that first evening. It's your mind that conquered me." "I promise you," said Eleanor, smiling, "on condition that you promise to always listen to me." "Forever," said Adrian, kissing her. Epilogue: The Voice's Legacy. 5 years later, the Duchess of Ravenswood's salon had become one of the most influential in England. Each week, Eleanor received the era's most brilliant minds, writers, philosophers, scientists, and more women. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Eleanor, opening a new session, "tonight's subject is the evolution of women's condition, real progress or illusions." In the audience, one recognized famous faces: George Eliot, under her real name Marian Evans, Barbara Bodichon, militant for women's rights, and even some young female doctors, those pioneers who were breaking all ceilings. "5 years ago," continued Eleanor, "I was told that an educated woman would never find a husband. Today, I observe that more and more intelligent men seek companions at their intellectual height." "It's true," intervened Adrian from his armchair. "I discovered that marrying one's equal was infinitely more enriching than marrying one's subordinate." Approving laughter ran through the audience. The ducal couple had become the living example of a union founded on intellectual equality and true love. "But we still have much ground to cover," added Eleanor. "Yesterday still, I received a letter from a young school teacher who was dismissed for daring to teach mathematics to girls. We must never forget that each victory is fragile." Lady Catherine, now 20 years old and engaged to a progressive young lord, raised her hand. "Aunt Eleanor, what would you say to young women who don't yet dare to speak?" Eleanor smiled at her protégée, who had become her niece. I would tell them what my own experience taught me. Your voice has the power to change the world. That evening, in this salon, when I stood up to speak, I not only found the love of my life, I discovered my own strength. And we, added Adrian, standing to join his wife, discovered that a marriage founded on mutual admiration and equality was the most beautiful gift we could give ourselves. At the other end of the salon, Mrs. Henderson, now aged but still in service, discreetly wiped away a tear. She had been right that evening to push her master toward love rather than flight. When the evening ended and guests retired, Eleanor and Adrian found themselves alone in their salon. "Satisfied with your evening?" asked Adrian, kissing her. "Very, and proud to see that we have perhaps, on our small scale, made things move." "We've done more than make them move," said Adrian. "We've proven that intelligent love was worth all arranged marriages." Eleanor smiled, caressing her husband's face. To think it all began with a moment of silence. A moment when the entire room fell silent to listen to a governess speak with passion and intelligence, completed Adrian. A moment when I fell in love discovering that soulmates truly exist. And now? Now we continue. We speak, we love, we inspire. We show the world that a woman can be brilliant and loved, that a man can be powerful and listening. Forever, forever, confirmed Adrian, kissing her again, for their love was born from the admiring silence of an assembly, discovering that a woman could speak with as much force as justice. And this revealing silence had given birth to the most beautiful of dialogues, that of two equal souls who had chosen to journey together. Against all the prejudices of their era, the entire room had fallen silent when the young governess spoke, and the Duke had fallen in love in an instant, for life.